Greetings, urban farmers, gardeners, and healthy food visionaries. Greg Peterson here, and welcome to the 276th episode of the Urban Farm Podcast, where 3 days a week we work together educating and inspiring you to become part of your food revolution. Healthy food is something that everybody wants. Delicious and nutritious and right outside your own door is even better. Just text GARDEN to 44222 or visit iwanttogarden.com and you will receive our free webinar about the 7 key factors you need to know to grow your own healthy food. Today on our podcast, we have someone who is an education resource for the food revolution. We're talking to Andy Schneider about chicken whispering. Better known as the Chicken Whisperer, Andy has become the go-to guy for any chicken-related questions. He has helped countless people start their own backyard flocks and has assisted in changing more laws around the country to allow backyard chickens than anyone else. He is a well-known radio personality as the host of the Backyard Poultry with the Chicken Whisperer radio show, as well as the editor-in-chief of Chicken Whisperer magazine, the national spokesperson for the USDA APHIS Biosecurity for Birds program. We'll have to ask him about that. And author of The Chicken Whisperer's Guide to Keeping Chickens. Andy travels around the U.S. educating people through science-based, fact-based, and study-based information about the many benefits of keeping backyard chickens and how to ensure that they stay healthy and free from disease. Welcome to the show today, Andy.
Thank you very much for having me, Greg.
Absolutely. So I shared a bit about you. Can you fill in the blanks for us and share more about the path you took to get where you're at today?
Absolutely. It's really the only way to describe it for me anyway is the American dream.
Oh, nice.
And it really is. When I tell my story, that's the first thing that comes out of people's mouths. That's the American dream right there. So at the end of the day, I took a hobby that I really enjoyed and turned it into a successful business/brand. And I wouldn't say it was by accident, but it was really almost not planned, and it was kind of planned along the way due to a lot of special circumstances.
Tell me.
So we kept chickens in an urban area long before it was quote-unquote cool, long before kind of the chicken movement started. And so people would often come up and we'd tell them, hey, we have some backyard chickens and whatnot. We had a lot of things, backyard chickens and goats and garden, water collection barrels, the whole 9 yards.
Nice.
And they would be like, oh, you must live on a farm or have lots of land. And we're like, no, we have a quarter acre in a subdivision right now.
Yeah,
and
that's where I'm at, by the way.
Oh, my gosh. And they're like, are you serious? And we're like, yeah, absolutely. In fact, it was over time, we even had like the Atlanta Master Gardeners coming out to see how on a quarter acre you could have a couple of goats, a couple of dogs, chickens, a garden, compost bin, all this stuff, and do it responsibly and not, of course, bother your neighbors, which is very important.
Yep.
It was great. So we had this hobby. We kept, the backyard chickens for a long time. And then when the movement kind of started across the country, people started getting interested, and they thought, hey, Andy's been doing this for a while. I'll just go to him to learn about this or to get started. He'll be able to help me and tell me how to do this because he's been doing it before it was, I guess, cool.
Right.
And I just helped people because I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the hobby, and other people were interested. But then one day, a really good friend of mine finally, I guess, jumped off the fence, if you will, and said, I'm doing this. I need some help. And I thought, I've been doing this for a while now. Obviously, there's a lot of people that want to get into this and do this, so let's take it to the next level. This was in the Atlanta area. And so I started an Atlanta club called the Atlanta Backyard Poultry Meetup Group through the Meetup websites,
model,
I guess.
Right.
And it growed to where I think now it's over 2,200 members, but I have since kind of handed that off to somebody else for their responsibility because it was getting, of my schedule, it was getting almost impossible. But
Wow, hold on. 2,200 members in your meetup group for chickens in Atlanta.
Just in Atlanta, that is correct. And it grew very it grew very quickly.
Yeah.
And so what happened was, I guess one of the local major news networks, it was a CBS network in Atlanta, just searching out, looking for different and odd and different things up and coming. They found the meetup group. And so they contacted me and wanted to do a segment on that. So they had them in my backyard, the whole 9 yards. And so this was CBS Local Atlanta.
Right.
And that aired over, I think, a few days. And then the phone started ringing, and I got other news media outlets. The next one was maybe New York. They flew down, and they did a story on me as well. And it just kind of snowballed from there. And then we continued to working on the group. We continued helping people in the Atlanta area. And then I think the biggest break, if you want to call it that, the most positive one that helped eventually the Chicken Whisperer brand was the major Atlanta newspaper, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. They came out, spent all afternoon with me in my backyard, and did a story. And before it came out, the lady who did the story, the reporter, said, it's coming out on Thursday. And I'm thinking, okay, probably in the metro section, garbage section, beep, 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 beep,
I
beep,
see
beep in the
where
paper.
I see where we're going here. Front. Let me guess. Front page, above the fold.
Well, it was close. It was front page below the fold, but it was actually about a quarter of the whole bottom page of the front of the paper.
Wow.
And it's so funny. I walked into the grocery store and I'm looking for it. I already started getting emails before I even went to pick up the paper.
Yeah.
So I knew something was going on, and I went and looked, and I turned the paper over once I just at the stand, and I see this. It's Atlanta's Chicken Whisperer, and front page below the fold. And I just put the paper down and kind of walked away for a minute to kind of consume this and what it really meant. So I started thinking, Greg, this is going to be in every doctor's office, every break room, every business, every oil change stand, and it just that, and then of course the AP picked it up, Associated Press, and that right there was probably the biggest push regarding backyard poultry, the Chicken Whisperer, and kind of creating the brand at that point. And then from there, I guess it's really all downhill.
I'm gonna stop you here. I got a couple of questions for you. Did they dub in that newspaper article the Chicken Whisperer, or was that something you had picked up?
No, I had picked it up at that point.
Got it. All right, cool. And give me a timeline. When was before Chicken Whisperer? What year was before Chicken Whisperer? Like you weren't keeping chickens, that's like the before that, and then after that. What year was that?
The Chicken Whisperer name started to get thrown around 2008, I believe it was.
When did you start keeping chickens?
Probably, now I bought and purchased my first chickens and turkeys back in 1990, I think it was 1991.
Wow. Good.
And so it was a while. And then I had them for a while, and then I didn't have them for a while, and then I got back and went into it.
We're close enough. I just was looking for a kind of a timeline. So you've been at this for a long time. And so I have in front of me this absolutely beautiful book. I believe it has a Rhode Island red on the cover. Is that a Rhode Island red?
I believe that is, yep, and it's sitting on the shovel.
Yep, the one sitting on the shovel. The book is called The Chicken Whisperer's Guide to Keeping Chickens. Everything you need to know and didn't know you needed to know about backyard and urban chickens. Tell us about your book, Andy.
Absolutely. I love the book. The issue you have there is the newly revised edition, which just came out in July. The book actually has been out for several years, and there were some things we wanted to take out, some more things that we wanted to put in based on, obviously, the movement over the last decade and things that we thought it was important to add in there. So it covers so much information. I think it's a great book, and I'm very upfront and honest with folks when I'm on tour, that if you've kept chickens less than 5 years, you'll probably learn a lot out of the book. If you've kept chickens over 5 years, you'll still learn some, because I brought in poultry scientist Dr. McCrae to really focus on making sure the material was, in fact, correct advice, correct.
Oh, very good.
That's very, very important. So we really let her run with, obviously, and right up front, chapters that I was nowhere near qualified to write, the medical issues, disease issues, different things like that. There was no way I was going to attempt to write that. So we brought in a wonderful poultry scientist, and then, of course, she overviewed the whole book just to make sure even what I was sharing with my experience in the book was correct. So very important. We take that very seriously.
Yeah, one of the things I loved about reading in your bio, I'm a scientist. I'm not a highly trained scientist, but I've studied science all through grade school, all through high school. And when I went back to college at the age of 39, I was getting a degree in botany science. So one of the things I really appreciate about your bio is you're educating people through science-based, fact-based, study-based information. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. So, for the first few years, Chicken Whisperer was about a person, an individual, and it ended up being me.
Right.
And so after several years, let's be honest, you can only take that so far, and we saw that Chicken Whisperer, just the name, was starting to really become a brand.
Yeah.
And we wanted to mold that brand and say, okay, when people think Chicken Whisperer or the Chicken Whisperer, what does that mean to them? What do they think? And we wanted to mold that so when they saw the brand, they would think, okay, this is, again, science-based, fact-based, study-based information that I can rely on to keep a healthy flock of chickens in my backyard.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we didn't want to make it anything like, oh, well, this worked for me, so it'll work for you, or, anything like that, or here's a home remedy that worked for me, so it'll work for you. We really wanted it, at the end of the day, to be something when they read it, when they researched it or saw it anywhere, whether it be the magazine, the book, the podcast, whatever, that they knew that they could rely on that as being true information.
Cool. And tell me about fact or chicken poop, because this kind of goes along the same lines as that.
It does. A couple of years ago, we just started to see the flood of, I guess there's no other way to call it, but, bad and misinformation out there, thanks to social media and the internet.
Yep.
And so I started a website. It's just factorchickenpoop.com. And we started with that. I would just search chicken blogs and chicken forums, and I would see a statement that someone made as if it was absolutely proven true. Right. And I took the statement, and I sent it to an array, many different. I choose one in their specialty based on the statement. Sent it to a poultry professional, i.e., poultry veterinarian, poultry scientist, poultry nutritionist, and I said, "Here's a statement we found on this chicken blogger forum. I'd like to know if it's fact or chicken poop." And so it took off so well. It was so popular. We were getting hits left and right on the website. And maybe a year after that, I said, you know what, this would be an awesome second book. Yeah. And so it'll be coming out in December, Chicken Fact or Chicken Poop, and we do the exact same thing. We take a statement. We're a little bit extra in the book, though. On the website, we take a statement, and then they explain why it would be fact or chicken poop. In the book, then they offer, in some instances, if it allows itself, to say, okay, well, this really doesn't work, but here's something that has been proven to work for this particular ailment. So you get a little bonus in the book, a little bit of extra bonus and education there.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me about your Chicken Whisperer brand, and how is that developed, and what are you doing with it? It sounds like there's gold there.
It's wonderful, and it has become a brand. And at the end of the day, I kind of like to tell people, it's really, the Chicken Whisperer brand is a medium where people can come and get information overload about keeping backyard poultry. So we have a podcast we do once a week, every Thursday. We have the magazine, Chicken Whisperer magazine, that's been out coming up 4 years now. And then we have, of course, the book, the upcoming book, and then we do Chicken Whisperer tours twice a year around the country. I've been in 32 states spreading the chicken love and that type of thing. And then, of course, through the USDA APHIS program, I'm their national spokesperson.
I was going to ask you about that. What's that mean?
Absolutely. So the USDA APHIS, they are all about biosecurity for your birds. And many years ago, I would say, hey, what does biosecurity mean for you? And a lot of people are like, I've never even heard of that word. What do you mean with my chickens?
Yeah, exactly.
And then I've seen I've seen it progress. We're doing a good job getting that term out there. Now, if I get on, say, my Facebook page, what does biosecurity mean to you? We still see some folks that are still trying to struggle with what it means. Oh, well, I do good biosecurity because I give organic feed or this, that, or the other.
Right.
And at the end of the day, it's really doing what you can to prevent infectious poultry diseases in your backyard and giving really simple solutions. And the USDA knows I'm very upfront with this because I'm laid back and I'm just a simple guy. So when I go out and I'm teaching a class about biosecurity, I'll tell them, I'm like, here's some free handouts. Here's tons of information. Please read through it. But let's talk about how we can implement this in your backyard pretty easily. Because while the USDA may say, we would recommend you do all of this, I'll give you an example here.
Please.
We would love for you to do all these tips. And it's great. If you want to or think you can do all of the tips they suggest, more power to you. But I try to be a little bit more realistic. I personally think that it's unrealistic to expect a soccer mom in suburbia that has 12 pet chickens in her backyard to stop at a car wash and wash her tires and wheel wells of her vehicle every time she leaves the feed store. She may read about doing that, but let's face it, folks, I'm realistic. That's probably not going to happen. It's just probably not going to happen.
Wow.
But here's some things that she could do very cost effectively.
Tell me.
That'll go a long way. So keeping a little container outside of the run and coop of hand sanitizer and use it before you go into the coop and the run, and of course after as well until you can go wash your hands. But you can give disease to your chickens as well. That's $1 at the dollar store. You do that, that's one step. The other, probably most important step is this. Having one designated pair of boots in your backyard that you take care of your chickens. You keep those boots in your backyard.
Yeah.
You're not taking them to the feed store.
Yep.
You're not taking them on the coop tour.
Yep.
That's it. Those boots stay in your backyard because we don't want your birds' diseases.
Right.
And when I say that, people are like, what are you talking? They want to fight. What are you talking about? My birds are absolutely disease-free. And then I throw them a curveball. I'm like, when was the last time you had them tested for anything? And then their jaw drops.
What do we test it for?
Yeah, you don't want to. Right. So you don't want to take it out. You don't want to bring it in.
Yeah.
So those are some things that I like to do with USDA is saying, here's a lot of information. Now let's break it down to things that are kind of realistic. But the brand that I think was your original question, again, that medium information overload where people can come and get science-based, fact-based, study-based information at the end of the day through all these resources that we provide.
Perfect. Well, and I want to go back to what you were saying a minute ago because I was serious about my question. What would I test my chickens for?
Oh, exactly. Absolutely. So, it's a loaded question versus hobby farm, commercial farm, different things like that.
Right.
So one of the big ones lately, for example, is, and I'm pretty sure this is an accurate statement. There may be 1 or 2 years in there that it didn't happen. I'm pretty darn close. In the last 15 years, and again, give or take a year or two, but I think I'm pretty accurate. In the last 15 years, there has been a Salmonella outbreak directly related to backyard poultry / mail order hatcheries in America. And last year happened to be the largest Salmonella outbreak in the history of the United States related to backyard poultry and mail order hatcheries. So here's where it gets a little tricky. So people are like, how do I know? Should I test my chickens for Salmonella? And it gets a little tricky. We've had tons of experts on the show to share their knowledge about this. And the issue there is, for one, when you test for Salmonella, it gets a little tricky because number one, your backyard birds, your chickens, may very well be carrying Salmonella, but they show no symptoms. They may be absolutely healthy looking, and you just don't know it. The issue with the test is they don't shed it every single day. So let's say you test on a Wednesday, and hey, everything's fine. It came back negative. They may not be shedding it on Wednesday, and guess what? Come Monday, they're shedding it out, and so it can be very difficult to do that. That is correct. The Salmonella outbreaks that we're having, I try to explain this to folks because immediately with their comments when we post about the outbreak, you can see how they're a little bit, don't quite understand it. These outbreaks are primarily the Salmonella in the dry. Like you said earlier and when we were talking, chicken poop. Where is,
Yeah.
if you own chickens, where is chicken poop? Where is chicken poop if you own chickens? All of our listeners, everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's on their beak. It's on their feathers. It's on their feet. It's in the everywhere else in your backyard.
Yep.
So this comes basically from putting your hands in your mouth after
Right.
you've touched something with chicken poop. And then, of course, you get the salmonella and that type of thing.
Yeah.
So educating on that, hey, you need to be very careful to wash your hands very well after.
Yeah.
We recommend biosecurity before you handle them and go and take care of them, but after as well.
That makes sense.
Maybe having that desert boots, different things like that, and just try to refrain. I don't know it's hard. I'm a real life person here. I know it's hard. Baby chicks are cute and cuddly. I get that. And you really care for your pet chickens in your backyard. I totally get it. I'm on your side. I promote this for years.
Uh-huh.
But, you just might want to think twice about, kissing your chickens. Maybe you want to do a little swab and petri dish and send it off to see what's on your chicken's beak before you are kissing it. And you might be surprised. So, but you're just responsible backyard poultry keeping, and
Perfect.
so I enjoy that and keeping it real though,
Yeah.
not over exaggerating it, keeping it real and letting them know. Say, here's some realistic things you can do to just at the end of the day, you're protecting your flock.
Yeah, perfect. So, before we skip on to the next section, I want to talk about your book a little bit. I mentioned it earlier.
Sure.
It's broken down in chapters. First one is Power to the Poultry, the growing urban chicken movement. What have you seen? Because you've been in it for just a little bit longer than I. I got my first chickens in 1999. And back then, I was the only guy in Phoenix teaching people how to do chickens. Now there's dozens of people in Phoenix teaching people how to do chickens. What has your experience been about the backyard chicken movement over the past 25 years?
Well, I guess it's pretty obvious that it is growing. It is still growing. I don't think today we're seeing the growth we had like we did back in maybe 2009, 2010, and it varies year to year.
Well,
I think the reason why this movement keeps growing, to be honest with you, is that somebody in the neighborhood will jump right in and get chickens and get the nice coop, and they'll get started. And their neighbor next door is keen on the idea. They like the idea, and they're thinking, I'm not quite ready to do this, but I'll watch my neighbor for a year and then see if it's really all it's cracked up to be, no pun intended.
Yeah.
And and then after a year, guess what? Now the neighbor's getting it. So I think that continued growth is helping the folks that are sitting back and watching their neighbors, and then they get the chickens, and then of course the same thing happens to their neighbor. So it's still growing without a doubt. And I tell folks, we know it's growing. We know there's a huge movement because there's more magazines, there's more books, there's more websites, there's more blogs. And I can assure you, all of your listeners, I can assure you, companies would not be spending tens of thousands of dollars developing chicken treats and chicken toys that people weren't actually buying.
Exactly.
Chicken treats and chicken toys, right? So we know it's still growing. Maybe not as explosive as it was 2010, 11, 9, but
yeah,
but
I know why then
growing
though.
Every year we feel.
That's we're in a great business for teaching people, because when the economy is good, our business is good. But when the economy is bad, our business. I know that my listenership exploded in 2009, 2010, because people were really concerned about where their food was coming from.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I could see that same thing happen back then. You had a lot of folks, and I'll, when I'm doing my shows, I'll tell people, I've been even traveling a little bit on the prepper circuit. I've been up to Cincinnati, Ohio, and spoke at a big prepper conference up there. And because they wanted to learn how to, instead of just, freeze-dried number 10 cans of prep food, they wanted to know how they could have some fresh chicken and eggs, high protein, and how they could do it in their backyard.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Precisely. Yeah, we're seeing that more and more. Well, cool. So I'm going to shift on you, and I'd like for you to talk about a time you failed, how you overcame that failure, and what you might have learned from it.
Sure. I was thinking a little bit about that today, and looking back, I've been very blessed with a lot of success, and a lot of it came to just kind of falling in my lap, if you will, like the book, working hard to make the brand, and then because of that, the phone call ringing, hey, would you like to do a book? Phone call rings, would you like to do a magazine, and so on. And I think right now, if there's a product I would say that failed, and if I was to deem why it failed, I think it was, I'm trying to think of a related product in history where this happened. It was too early for the movement. It was too early for the technology. So I'm trying to think back in time of maybe a product, and I'm having a blank now, that was created back when, and it failed just because people weren't ready for it yet.
Yeah.
And one product, and I'm trying to think what year it was. It was probably about 7 years ago, and I was sitting in a restaurant with some friends of ours, and we were just talking about just brainstorming all kinds of different things. And I told them, I said, I think it would be really neat to do, I forgot exactly what it was, different chicken whisperer items. Like we had T-shirts and all kinds of things. And I was thinking, and then decks of cards, and then just brainstorming, we thought, what about chicken trading cards? And so we started to write down all this information. And I said, this is going to be fabulous. There's no way this is going to fail, which is our topic right now. And so we searched, and we found a great company that would do this. And I went, say, to the big box stores, and I looked at baseball cards and football cards and Pokemon cards and all these different collector cards to get a price line of what people were paying.
Right.
And because we wanted to keep them comparative, so that, they're just ripping us off. So we got that. We found a great company, and we got some sponsors to help offset the cost of the initial investment of getting everything done. So I think we ended up having in the first set, and we hadn't really determined if we were going to do this yearly, like the 2010 set, 2011 set, or quarterly. We weren't sure how it was going to take off. And so the first set had, I believe, 15. It came in a really nice clear plastic little case, just like you would some fancy baseball cards.
Right.
15 chicken whisperer collector cards. 3 of the cards were basically ad cards. So I believe Ideal Poultry was one of them. I think USDA was one of them, APHIS, and I'm trying to think which the third sponsor was. But anyway, so we had 3 sponsor cards in there, and then the other 12 cards on the front, it had a nice picture of the breed. And on the back, it had all this technical information about the breed itself from the American Poultry Association. I think it was $5, and that actually included shipping to your front door.
Oh, my gosh.
That's what the cost of these were. That was it. We were all geared up. We were so excited, and it was just like, okay, we're going to sell more than 3 decks today? Or, so it just, if it's hard to call that a failure, but I mean, like I said, out of everything that I had brainstormed, chicken whisperer related, that pretty much just went nowhere. And right now, I sometimes think about pulling those things out and dusting them off, because I still have who knows how many, a few thousand of them, and thinking, maybe now's the time to re-enter that and see what happens. But you could think, I was thinking 4-H, FFA, people that were just crazy about chickens, all that, because it was very educational. I had the picture of a championship breed according to the APA, American Poultry Association, on the back, technical information about the breed, and it just kind of went nowhere. So out of everything, and that was the shocker, because all of us and everybody I talked to, this is going to be great, and it just went nowhere. And maybe it was before its time, because it was right there at the explosion of 2010, I believe it was. And maybe now it would explode like crazy, but
hey,
I
want a set. Will you send me a set?
I can see it. I think they're in storage, but I think when I get back to that corner of the storage facility, I can send you a set. And it was the popular breeds. Yeah, but it was so that was probably one that just didn't go anywhere.
What do you consider your biggest success?
Wow, the biggest success. I'm not sure. My mom and dad have since passed, so if I was sitting in the living room with my mom, chicken whisperer related, of course, my family, I think, is my biggest success, my kids and wife. But chicken whisperer related, obviously, I don't know, because I don't, trust me, it's cool to walk in, say, to a feed store and have a full size cardboard silhouette of you standing there going, hey, that's kind of cool. I will admit, I'm a human being. That's kind of neat.
Yeah.
Going down the list of things like being in Time Magazine or having a mention in Time Magazine or the Wall Street Journal,
cool.
USA
Yeah.
Today. That's pretty cool, but I don't know if I would consider that a success. Maybe again, I'm a human being, that's cool. I think that's cool, but success-wise, maybe it is, at the end of the day, the big success in this story is, which everybody in America has the opportunity to do, is taking that hobby that you just did for nothing because you enjoyed it so much, and then actually kind of molding that along the way, fine-tuning it into a business that you can live off of for 9 years, educate people, share your knowledge, and yeah, that's what all this was about, is just sharing my experience with others. So they wouldn't, I've said that a million times. What do? I share my experience with others so they don't have to reinvent the wheel. Yeah. And that's when it was all about, that's early, like in our story, was when it was about a person, the Chicken Whisperer, versus now being more of a brand. But we just kind of expanded it. It's still information. It's just more ways to get the information.
Yeah, perfect. What drives you?
Wow. I'm very passionate about, and sometimes this can reflect negatively on the Chicken Whisperer. I'll give you an example of that. Very passionate about getting the right information into the hands of the people, here's the important part, that want it. I found over the years that some people just don't want it. And then when you start sharing, the science-based, fact-based, study-based information with folks, that you come across, unfortunately, and I'll give you a perfect example of this. You see a post that says, pumpkin seeds are an all-natural dewormer for chickens.
Right.
And then you make a post, and I'm like, really? Do trying to, in social media, you can't have feelings with a typewriter, in a computer. And I just dated myself, typewriter. But you just can't see the emotion in that post. So people actually come up to me after I'm actually speaking live in a workshop and saying, I can see now how passionate you are about what you do. So I can totally see how online and your online presence, I can see how people think that, and here's where it comes into play. I'll try to post things. I'm human too. Nobody likes to be called out. Nobody likes to say, you're wrong. That is bad information. That is wrong. Nobody likes that. I don't like that. It's the bottom line. We're human.
Right.
But online, it's very tricky to do that. So just by me posting some information that we'll say at the end of the day proves their theory wrong or suggests that they're wrong, all of a sudden the Chicken Whisperer is, oh, well, he's arrogant. He's a know-it-all. He's, all this stuff. And then when people see me live, when I'm speaking at an event, I've had them many a times come up to me and say, you're nothing of the such. But then they can see, because I'm so passionate of wanting to get that right information out there. There's only so many ways you can do it in social media. Is that sometimes you'll get labeled, or they'll leave a bad taste in their mouth because, let's face it, we're human. We don't like to be told we're wrong or proven wrong. Yeah. And right off the bat, I've just gained an enemy, if you will, because I proved them. I'm just trying to educate. Yeah. And so some people don't want the right information, and they'll go to all stretches and corners of the earth to try to and do weeks of research to try to find maybe one bit of information that says what they're doing is right. I found it. So it's very interesting how that works. But that's a challenge right there. That's a challenge.
So what one final piece of advice do you have for our listeners?
Wow, I guess if it's chicken related, whether you're getting started or maybe you've kept chickens for a few years now, my biggest advice is, basically research. And I'll give you one last example regarding what I mean by that.
Please.
And another example of how sometimes the advice will maybe turn somebody off, or they just won't get what I'm trying to do, which is educate. And I'll give you an example of that. Research. And I know this is not 100%, but in a lot of cases that I see online, at the end of the day, if you lose a chicken to a predator and are frustrated because of that and are upset because of that, and you want to know who to blame because of that, look in the mirror.
Yep, there's only
Those
one
chickens
person. Yep.
That's one person, and at the end of the day, regardless if you like it or not, because I have brainstormed this till I'm blue in the face.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, there's only two reasons why you lost a predator. One, you didn't do the research on how to prevent it, and two, unfortunately, this is true, and two, you didn't spend the necessary money to have a predator-proof coop and run.
Yeah.
And let's face it, it costs some serious money to really have a good predator-proof coop and run.
It does.
And I want people to. And so that's again how so again sometimes that reflects negatively on myself.
Right.
Oh, he's a know-it-all or whatever.
No, I don't think so.
Arrogant. But,
yeah, I don't think so.
But at the end of the day, it's like we can argue this all day long. It's your And again, I'm not talking about a grizzly bear. I'm talking about the numerous predator attacks I see on these blogs and forums. Another raccoon got my favorite hen. Well,
at that point, yeah, I hear you. At that point, absolutely. Well, we did, interestingly, so we live right in basically central Phoenix. And about a year and 3 months ago, we actually lost 10 hens to a predator. Now, I've been keeping chickens since 1999. And for the first 12 years that I kept chickens here at the Urban Farm, they didn't even have an enclosed coop. That's how, how little of a predator problem we've ever had here. So when our chickens got taken out by, in this case, a bobcat in the middle of Phoenix, Arizona, it's like, wake up, Greg. So we embarked on putting in a predator-proof 800 square foot chicken coop here at the Urban Farm. But the thing that cracks me up is what you just said. Well, another raccoon got another one of my chickens. It's like, whoa, hold on here, time out. Now you know they're coming. Do something about it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
my biggest what I see happening is the chicken owner, they're for whatever reason, they're focused in the wrong direction. They focus on the predator. For example, this raccoon. Can I trap it? Is it legal to trap it? Can someone come trap it for me?
Yep,
Can I shoot it? If I shoot it, what do I do with it? All this information, and then you're like, well, if you get rid of that raccoon, however you do it, there's another 300 in the woods.
Yep, exactly.
So find out, who cares about the raccoon if you, that predator-proof coop and run. And we're talking about a raccoon. I get grizzly bears can rip the door off of a 1-ton truck. I get it. But a raccoon, really? Yeah. So, you can make your coop and run raccoon-proof. Let's concentrate on that instead of the raccoon. Then if you do that, then I don't care if there's 900 raccoons out there, they still can't access your run and coop. And if you go back, let's think about why this happened. You either didn't research enough on how to do this, or you just weren't willing to spend the money on how to do that.
Yeah, I'm going to add you didn't know, because we had no idea that there were bobcats in our neighborhood.
Right.
I mean, they had to travel 3 miles from the nearest desert in order to find our chicken coop. So, there is that piece of not knowing, but once you know, you got to do something about it.
You got to fix it.
I know we're toward the end of our talk today, but we brought this up a lot, and I think in here you have a chapter on predator-proof coops. Do you not?
We do have a really great chapter on predators. It even talks about and has pictures of different prints that you might see around the coop and what that may identify as different predators and what you can do to predator-proof your coop. And let's face it, everybody loves chicken, and predators have nothing but time on their hands to figure out how to get to your chickens. So it is probably when I'm asked a lot of times, what would you share the most important thing? Obviously, number one is research anything and everything that you can.
Yep.
And of course, number two, maybe our biggest responsibility as backyard chicken keepers is, number one, predator-proof. And that kind of goes with coops, too. People think, when they think coops, they're thinking they want something that looks pretty or matches their house or whatever the case may be. The top two, when folks who are listening, when you get into this, maybe you're reinventing this or you get looking for a new coop, the top two, bar none. Number one, how predator-proof is that coop?
Yep.
Number two, very important, how easy is that coop going to be to clean? Because if it's not easy to clean, you're not going to clean it as often as you should, and that's just not fair to your chickens.
Yeah. Amen to that.
That's top two.
Amen to that.
And a lot of people don't think about that. they think pretty coops or
Yep.
functional or whatever, but
Yep.
they don't think maybe predator-proof and especially easy to clean. So I always add that to the top of the list.
Yeah. So you can find more about all of this in Andy's book, The Chicken Whisperer's Guide to Keeping Chickens. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today, Andy.
Thank you very much for having me. I've had a great time.
Absolutely. So how can our listeners get a hold of you?
It's very, very easy. chickenwhisperer.com will get them to where they can purchase the book, sign up for the magazine subscription, see when I'm touring, the podcast, everything. Very
Perfect.
simple, chickenwhisperer.com.
Perfect. You can also find show notes from today's podcast at urbanfarm.org/Chicken Whisperer. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for joining us on the Urban Farm Podcast. Healthy food is something that everybody wants. Delicious and nutritious and right outside your own door is even better. Just text GARDEN to 44222 or visit iwanttogarden.com and you will receive our free webinar about the 7 key factors you need to know to grow your own healthy food.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Urban Farm Podcast. Remember to listen 3 days a week for tips, advice, and resources to help you on your journey with urban farming. You can find us on the web at urbanfarm.org or send us an email to podcast@urbanfarm.org. In the words of Vincent van Gogh, great things are done by a series of small things brought together. Be encouraged that with each lesson learned and skill developed, you are one step closer in the direction of your dreams.